What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your ROCKMIX 6FX 6-channel mixer and USB interface. As you can see, it comes with the mixer itself, a USB cable to connect your mixer to your laptop or computer. It also comes with a USB power block if we wanted to power the mixer through a power outlet. There's also a USB to DC cable to power your mixer as well. And lastly, it comes with this Bluetooth antenna that we can plug right into the back of the mixer, which will improve the connection between your Bluetooth device and the mixer. Now we've broken this video down into separate parts so you can jump into a part that you need help with the most. Just follow the timestamps on screen here. So the first thing I want to show you guys is how to connect your speakers to your mixer so you'll be able to hear everything coming through the mixer as we demonstrate all the different features. So here I have our very own DPM5 speakers that I'm going to connect right to the mixer. Now we have two options for outputs that we can use with the mixer, including the balanced XLR outputs or the 1/4 inch unbalanced outputs depending on what kind of cables or speakers you have. So for today I'm going to use the XLR outputs, so I'm going to need a couple of XLR cables. I'm going to take the female ends and plug them into the XLR outputs here on the mixer. Then I'm going to take the other end and plug it into the XLR inputs on the back of my speakers. You want to be sure the speakers you're using are active speakers or passive speakers connected to an amplifier to power them. So now we can go ahead and turn on the mixer, and then we'll turn on the speakers. We also want to turn up the volume knobs here on the back of the speakers. So if we take a look at the mixer itself, you'll see we have 6 channels available to use. Channels 1 and 2 have combo jack inputs, so we have the option to use XLR or 1/4 inch. They both come with a gain knob to set the microphone or instrument sensitivity, and a pad button that lowers signals -25 dB in case something very loud is coming through the channel, or if you're working with sensitive microphones like condenser mics. Now I do want to point out the difference between the gain and the level knobs because they often get confused. So like I mentioned, we want to use the gain knob to set the microphones or instrument sensitivity, which will define how they pick up signal. The level knob will adjust the volume of the channel, and from there we can blend the signal to taste. So keep in mind the gain and the level knobs are codependent to each other, and if distortion or clipping occurs, it's because of how these two parameters interact. So we want to make sure that we have a nice blend between the two, and we also recommend keeping an eye on this peak light here towards the bottom of the channels when setting your gain or level knob. So here I have my dynamic microphone and my XLR cable that I'm going to connect to a channel on our mixer. So I'll take the female end and connect it to my microphone, then I'll take the other end and plug it into channel 1 here on my mixer. So now I want to raise the gain knob to adjust the sensitivity, and the level knob to adjust the volume of the channel, and I'll also want to raise this main mix knob so we can hear everything coming out of our speakers. So now if I turn on my microphone, you should be able to hear my voice coming out of the speakers. So as you can hear, we have a pretty good sound here with our microphone. The peak light isn't coming on, so we know we have a good blend between the gain and the level. And we can also tell we're at a good spot if we look at these output levels here, because we're in the green, so we know our level isn't getting too hot. So again, we can use the combo jack inputs to plug in 1/4 inch cables, so we can use a guitar, bass, or keyboard with the mixer. And on channel 2, there's a high Z impedance button that will set the channel to the right input specifically for guitars or basses. So to connect a guitar or bass, I'm going to need a 1/4 inch cable. I'll take one end and plug it right into my guitar. Then I'll take the other end and plug it into channel 2 here on my mixer. So now we'll want to activate the high Z button here. Then we'll raise the gain and level knobs for channel 2. Then I'll raise the volume here on my guitar. So now if I play my guitar, you should be able to hear it coming out of the speakers. This is great for songwriters or musicians who want to use one track to record vocals and the other track to record their instrument. Now on the ROCKMIX 6FX, we can use channels 1 and 2 together as a stereo input by pressing this mono stereo button in the middle here. So when the button is unpressed, we have both channels acting as mono channels so we can use them individually. And when we press the button down, we set the channels to stereo mode so we can use them together. So just to demonstrate for you guys, I have my synthesizer here which has a stereo output, so I'm going to connect it to the 2 channels here on the mixer. I'm going to connect one end of both cables to the left and right outputs here on my synth, then I'm going to connect the other ends into channels 1 and 2 here on the mixer. So now I'll turn on my synthesizer. I'm going to raise the gain and level knobs here on channels 1 and 2. I want to press the mono and stereo button in for stereo mode. Then I'll raise the main mix knob so we hear everything coming out of the speakers. And then I'll raise the volume knob here on my synthesizer. So now if I play on the synth, you should be able to hear it coming out of the speakers. So when channels 1 and 2 are engaged in stereo mode, channel 1 is actually panned to the left, and channel 2 is panned to the right, and when both channels are set in mono mode, they're both panned in the middle. This is important to know when you're recording with your DAW. So when you engage this stereo switch when using channels 1 and 2 on your DAW, the DAW will see channel 1 on the left side and channel 2 on the right side separately. This way you can set up 2 separate tracks on your program. So we're gonna keep going through the features here of the mixer, so I have my microphone plugged back in. So you'll see there's a button here to activate phantom power for channels 1 and 2 for condenser microphones. We're actually going to circle back to that one in a bit. So if we keep going down, you'll see we have a 2-band EQ for channels 1 and 2 with a high EQ knob and a low EQ knob. So if I play with my high EQ here, check 1 2, check 1 2, you'll start to hear a lot more high end or treble in my voice. And if I bring it all the way down, you won't hear any of that high end at all. So let's bring it back to the middle. Check 1 2 for a nice flat sound. Now if I play with the low knob here, check 1 2, check 1 2, you'll hear an increase in the bass frequencies. And if I lower it all the way down, check 1 2, check 1 2, you'll only hear that high end coming through. So let's bring it back to the middle again for an even sound. So if we look below that, you'll see an effects button here for channels 1 through 4. This allows us to use the Dsp Effects knob here, which come with a lot of really cool effects. So to demonstrate that for you guys, I'm gonna press the effects button here. I'll also want to raise the effects level knob right in the middle. And now you should hear my voice, but with an effect on it. Right now we have the gated reverb on. This is a nice solid reverb to have on your voice or even your instrument. So let's keep going through some of the effects here. Next we have the vocal cancel. Vocal cancel acts as a center channel extractor. So if my vocal is coming out of the left, center, and right channels, I'll take the vocal coming out of the center, so it's going to the left and the right only. Check 1 2, this is like a reverb with a lot more depth to it. Moving on to hall 2, check, check. This one has a lot of depth but a lot more low end to it, really cool. Moving on, we have the pitch up. Check 1 2. This of course will raise the pitch of your voice up, and if we move down to pitch down, this will bring down the pitch of your voice. Let's move on to tremolo now. This adds a warble to your voice, so if I hold down a note, whoa. Let's move on to flanger. Check 1 2, check 1 2, makes it wavy sounding, whoa. Let's move on to plate 1, check, check. Plate 1 acts as another cool reverb. Let's move on to plate 2, 1 2 1 2, another cool reverb with a quicker decay. Moving on to rotary speaker now. Check 1 2. Almost acts as like a slapback delay. Kinda acts as a mix of a reverb and a delay together. Moving on to room. Check 1 2. This is room. Another cool reverb. Moving on to chorus. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Really cool. Really cool. Next we have a combo of room and chorus. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Oh, that's cool. Alright, next we have delay 1. Check 1 2. This acts as a shorter kind of delay. And if we move on to delay 2. Check. Oh, yeah. This acts as your standard delay, so you hear delay. And then we'll bring it back to the middle, back to the gated reverb. Now, like I mentioned before, we can use a condenser microphone with channels 1 and 2. So to show you guys how that works, I'm gonna connect my condenser microphone right here to channel 1. And I'll also want to activate the phantom power button that I pointed out to you guys before. After that, we're going to raise the gain and level knob for that channel. And then we'll raise the main mix knob so we hear everything coming out of the speakers. And now you should be able to hear my voice coming out of the speakers. And remember, for some condenser microphones, you may need to use the pad button here, which will lower the signal minus 25 dB. This especially helps out if your microphone is very sensitive like a condenser microphone is, or if there's a signal coming in too hot through your channel. Now channels 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 are line level stereo channels that have these 1/4 inch inputs here. You can use these for instruments that have stereo outputs like keyboards. You can also use the channels in mono if you plug into the top inputs here. They both have a gain button, so we can set the gain for each channel either high or low depending on the instrument you're using. Now channels 5 and 6 can also be assigned as your playback channel for Bluetooth devices that you connect to the mixer. So to show you guys how that works, I'm going to connect my smartphone right to the ROCKMIX 6FX. So we'll want to start by pressing this Bluetooth button here to activate the feature. Then on channels 5 and 6, we'll want to press this Bluetooth button here to set it into Bluetooth mode. Next, we'll raise the volume knob here on channels 5 and 6. Next, we'll go into the Bluetooth settings of whatever device you're connecting and search for ROCKMIX 6FX. Click on it to pair, and you'll know your device is connected when you hear that sound. So now let's hear how it sounds. Sounds nice. So you can use the channel to affect the volume, lower it a little bit. Yeah. Then raise it back up. Oh yeah. Very nice. Sounds nice and clean too. Oh yeah. Also important to note, when you have this feature engaged, you can't use channels 5 and 6 for your stereo line signal because it's already being used for your Bluetooth. So let's say you wanted to record a keyboard but also have music playing through your Bluetooth channel, you'll want to use channels 3 and 4. Whatever's coming through your Bluetooth channel can also be recorded onto your DAW. Channels 5 and 6 also have this PC2 button here. Now this is very important to use if you're using the interface with your computer, because otherwise you won't be able to hear anything coming out of your speakers when using your computer for music playback. So you'll see when we have the button unpressed that the sound coming from your PC will go out to your main mix, and when we have it pressed down, it will be played back through your headphones. And you'll also want to be sure to raise this level knob as well. Now a very important note, if you're using the PC2 feature, you'll also want to be sure that the monitoring inside of your DAW is off, or else you'll cause a feedback loop. So speaking of DAWs, let me show you guys next how to connect your mixer to your computer. Like GarageBand that comes included on all Mac computers, and Audacity that you can download right onto your PC. Whatever you decide to use, both Macs and PCs are compatible with the mixer, so you can start recording or mixing as soon as you get it all set up. So to connect the mixer to your computer, you're just going to grab the USB cable and plug it right into your computer. Now if you have a more modern computer that only has USB-C ports, you may need this USB-A to USB-C adapter here. So we'll plug that right into the USB for the mixer, and then just plug it right into your computer. So next you'll want to go into the sound settings of your computer and switch the input and output device to USB audio codec. You can also do this in the sound settings of whatever DAW you're using. So for example, I want to go into the audio preferences on Logic Pro X, switch the output and input device to USB audio codec, which already is set to right here. You'll also want to make these steps if you're using Audacity on your PC, and then you'll be good to go. Now one important thing to note is that when you're setting your source channels in your DAW, you can use the ROCKMIX in a stereo configuration or in dual mono. In other words, all of the inputs on your mixer from channels 1 to 6 will be summed up as 1 and 2. So you won't see tracks 1 to 6 separately in your DAW. However, the mixer will record everything coming out of the main outputs all together. So for example, if I had one track dedicated to my vocals and another track dedicated to my guitar, and the input for my guitar track as input 2. Or you can make a stereo track with inputs 1 and 2 together, and the guitar and vocals will be recorded on the same track. This would also be the case if you used all of the inputs together and recorded it all through a stereo track. Another important note is that in order to hear yourself or your music while you're recording, all you'll need to do is connect your headphones. To do that, you'll just plug your headphones into the 1/4-inch headphone jack right on the mixer and raise the volume knob here that says phones. You'll also want to press your PC2 button in so that everything coming from your computer is heard through your headphones. So I want to record a sample for you guys, so I'll use my condenser mic here, make sure the phantom power button is on to power the microphone, then I'll raise the gain and level knobs. Another really important note is that you want to raise the main mix knob, so as I raise the main mix knob, check 1 2, check 1 2, you'll see the signal coming through the track here. I'm also able to hear everything coming through my headphones, check 1, check 2. From here, all I have to do is hit record. Now as I'm recording, we can use all of the features here that we talked about before, including the 2-band EQ, check 1 2, check 1 2. Yeah, you start to hear that presence of the high end. And if I raise the low, check 1 2, check 1 2, a lot more bass. But we'll leave it in the center here for a nice even sound. This also goes for the effects knob that we were talking about before. If I press the effects button and choose an effect, check 1 2, check 1 2. Yep, that comes right through the track. So cool. Now for you Pro Tools users out there is one more step you have to do in order to use the interface with your computer. Now to do that, you would just go into the audio MIDI settings on your computer. As you can see, I already made one here for the ROCKMIX 6FX, but I'll go through the steps again so you guys know how to do it. So you'll start by going to the bottom left corner to this plus sign over here, click on it, and then click on Create Aggregate Device. And as you can see, you'll have the option to add 2 USB audio codecs, and you'll want to add those both because 2 are the inputs and 2 are the outputs of the mixer itself. After that, you can actually hover over the name of the device and rename it ROCKMIX 6FX to make it easier. Then you'll want to go to the Setup tab up here on Pro Tools, go to Playback Engine, and switch the playback device to ROCKMIX 6FX. So I just created a track so you guys can see that we have signal coming in here because we made the aggregate device for Pro Tools. Then from there, you can use the ROCKMIX 6FX with Pro Tools to record, mix, and much more. So now we want to go over some troubleshooting points in case any of you guys at home run into any of these issues. Now, in case your computer doesn't recognize the mixer at first, you can unplug your mixer from your computer, wait about 30 seconds, and plug it back in. If that trick doesn't work, we recommend unplugging your mixer and then restarting your computer. Wait about another 30 seconds when your computer's all booted up, and then plug the mixer back in again. After that, you'll want to check the sound settings just to make sure that your computer will recognize the mixer. If you're experiencing any loud noise or feedback, this may be because your microphone's gain is too high or your speakers are set too loud. So you'll want to be sure to check your gain and level settings like we showed you how to do before to make sure you're getting the right blend. You'll also want to make sure your microphone isn't too close to your speakers. If you're still experiencing any loud noise or hum, we recommend checking out your cables to make sure they're in proper condition. If you don't hear any sound whatsoever coming out of your speakers or headphones, check to make sure everything is plugged in all the way and make sure your level and gain knobs are set properly. When you're troubleshooting an issue where there's no signal coming out of your speakers whatsoever, try turning down the volume on the speakers themselves on the back, then check the output level LEDs on the mixer itself to see if there's any signal coming through at all. So if there's signal coming through the mixer but you're not hearing it even with your speakers turned all the way up, this may mean there's a problem with your speakers. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your ROCKMIX 6FX 6-channel mixer and USB interface. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.